Tonight, a grade 10 student is fighting for his life after being shot outside his West End High School.
After he was shot, he ran back into the school. The victim ran back into the school.
Kind of in shock. I think this is just like a really bad nightmare.
Police calling it a drive-by shooting in the school parking lot as they continue to search for suspects tonight. Plus,
it was an emotional moment last night when he delivered that letter.
And now we have to move on.
with John Tory officially signing off as mayor tomorrow, what happens next? We'll take you through it. And
there are people who are buried under the rubble and the relatives sitting outside helplessly.
Compelled to help, a pair of Canadians are flying out of Pearson tonight to help assist in the humanitarian effort in Turkey. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. A 15-year-old Toronto high school student remains in critical condition tonight after being shot outside his West End high school. Police say he had just left the building to go for lunch around noon when he was shot in the school parking lot. The suspects who fled in a vehicle still on the loose tonight. Greg Ross has more.
This victim was shot in the chest area.
At this point, police say it's not clear why a 15-year-old was shot outside of Weston Collegiate this afternoon.
After he was shot, he ran back into the school.
The school board has confirmed he was a grade 10 student at the school.
Some of our staff immediately jumped in and quite frankly were tending to the student who was very clearly injured and tried to keep him as comfortable as possible until paramedics could arrive.
The victim was rushed to a critical care center. The school was immediately placed into lockdown, with police quickly arriving on the scene. This created a great deal of confusion for students who had already left for lunch.
At first we thought the shooter was inside because our friend told us that she was on lockdown, and so we didn't really know what was going on.
They rushed into the school, and then we were standing outside for like a good 30 minutes before they brought the victim out on the stretcher.
Distraught parents, unable to communicate with their children, began coming to the school, desperately trying to get some information.
We're scared to death. We're worried. We just want them out to see if they're okay.
After a couple of hours, students were evacuated and taken to nearby elementary schools. Weston Collegiate remained closed until late this afternoon as the police investigation continued.
I do not have a description of the suspects or the suspect vehicle.
Police are in the process of looking for anyone who may have witnessed the shooting this afternoon, and they believe there would have been quite a few students around just because so many of them were leaving at the time to go for lunch. They're also talking to people who live in the neighborhood around the school, hoping that someone may have some security video that may have captured something important, particularly that getaway vehicle that the suspects left the scene in. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario Provincial Police have released photos of 3 people suspected of abducting a 37-year-old woman from Wasaga Beach just over a year ago. The OPP say the 2 men and 1 woman in these photos are wanted in connection with the abduction of Elnaz Hajtamiri from a relative's home last January. Investigators say 3 people dressed in police gear took Hajtamiri and forced her into a white Lexus UV before leaving the area. The police are looking for help identifying the suspects who they believe are living in the GTA. Police also releasing a photo of 2 people of interest who are not considered suspects. The OPP issued a $100,000 reward on the 1-year anniversary of Hajtamiri's kidnapping for information leading to her whereabouts. York Regional Police have arrested 2 people and have a warrant for a 3rd in connection to a Hollywood-style robbery at a mall in Vaughan earlier this month. Now, it happened at Vaughan Mills Mall around 1 in the morning on February 1st. 2 thieves used a stolen car to smash their way through the glass entrance of the mall and steal merchandise from an electronics store. 2 suspects, Israel Muamba and O'Brien Grant, have been arrested and are in custody pending a bail hearing. A Canada-wide warrant has been issued for a 3rd suspect, 21-year-old Lizaine Pillay. And a Canada-wide warrant has been issued for a 3rd suspect. As I said, Lizaine Pillay. Police believe he is in the Montreal area, and they are urging him to turn himself in to local police. By this time tomorrow, John Tory will no longer be mayor of Toronto. Tory is set to leave office at 5 p.m. on Friday after officially handing in his resignation yesterday. Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey will be temporarily stepping into the role. But what happens after that? Ali Chiasson takes a closer look.
You could see the look of resignation on his face. After last night's long budget debate, Mayor John Tory would formally submit his resignation to the clerk.
For all of us, whatever your political leaning was when he arrived here in 2015, it was an emotional moment last night when he delivered that letter.
I have to respect the decision that he made, and now we have to move on.
What does moving on look like? Well, Toronto's Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey takes charge of city government operations. She doesn't become an acting or interim mayor. The role is more about keeping the city on track until a new mayor is elected. She doesn't even intend on running for mayor herself. She's looking forward to overseeing the transition and returning to her role as councillor for Scarborough Rouge Park. Tory's last day in office is tomorrow. Council will formally declare the mayor's office vacant at the next council meeting set for March 29th, and that kicks off a by-election. Nominations will open the next day, and Torontonians could see a 45-day campaign period, which brings us to maybe May or June for an election day, but there are variables that can change that.
I think uncertainty is very bad for the city. We desperately need a new financial framework. Nobody's going to be able to really or negotiate that until we have a new mayor. The time is fleeting. The next fiscal year is going to be here before we know it. So I think we need to get on with it.
There's a bit of decay, and I think we need someone who can tackle those challenges, who can make this city safer, help people to feel safer, and get us back on track.
Well, how about you, police officer turned city councillor and TTC chair John Burnside?
No, thanks. No.
We need people that have the vision and the experience, but also the guts.
Runner-up from last election, Gil Peñalosa, already making the rounds at City Hall today.
As soon as the registrations opens, I'm going to file. I'm ready. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been doing a lot of work for a long time. My policies are going to be basically the same, so I'm ready.
But the dust needs to settle a little. The last election was less than 4 months ago. It's been less than a week since the mayor threw in the towel.
October's election cost the city about $14.5 million. So the City of Toronto will have to budget for at least that. Yet again, we don't know when exactly Election Day will be, but we do know that the mayor's last day in this office is tomorrow. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now for a first look at the forecast. And Colette, what a difference a day makes. Much chillier today.
Yeah, winter definitely biting back, and not just with the temperatures, but also with the wintry conditions and the mix that we're seeing. But of course, the real concern being areas of freezing rain and really taking it easy on the roads as we carry on through the midnight hour and beyond. And then we'll be seeing less of the mixing and more of it just being some light snow or flurries kind of pushing through the GTA. Although into eastern Ontario will carry on a little later than that, going into the early morning hours. And winter weather travel advisories in place too. In many cases here, we're looking at 5 to 10 centimeters, a little less into eastern Ontario. There it's more likely closer to that 5 centimeter mark. But as I roll this forward, you see what I mean? About 3 a.m. we're losing some of that mixed precipitation around the GTA, but it still carries on into the early morning hours in eastern Ontario, and yet it's just a few flurries lingering, likely till about 6 a.m., so quite early tomorrow, and then it's gone, meaning the commute tomorrow morning is hopefully going to be okay, unless you're just a little bit further north in some of those areas where it stays around a bit longer, all right? We do get into some clearing later on Friday, and we'll start the first part of the day Saturday with some of that sunshine before things change, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll go into more on that coming up tonight. -6, and tomorrow afternoon a daytime high in the negatives, just -4 degrees.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. The body that regulates real estate agents in Ontario is now urging its members to be on higher alert for fraudulent sales of homes. The Real Estate Council of Ontario, also known as RECO, sent out a memo after a series of CBC Toronto investigations revealed GTA homes have been mortgaged and even sold without the owner's consent. Farah Morali has the latest.
What we know is the memo went out on Tuesday afternoon. RECO oversees about 100,000 real estate agents and brokers in Ontario. And its key message to those members was this: be vigilant when it comes to verifying the person you're dealing with in a real estate transaction actually is who they say they are. The memo reminds realtors that they're required by law to verify that the parties involved have the correct identity. It offers some tips. It says they should scrutinize a client's ID, check out things like their age, their height, their eye color, make sure they match up. It encouraged them to use a free public database to check if an Ontario driver's license is valid. That's something we've talked about in previous stories. The other thing they said to keep an eye out for is inconsistencies, things like spelling mistakes in paperwork. And if they are suspicious, they say to ask questions that only the owner of a home would know. Things like, how old is the furnace? When did you get the roof repaired? Do you have receipts for these things? Now, we had a chance to speak briefly with Tim Hudak. He's the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, a professional association, about the memo and title fraud.
The realtors, the bankers, the lawyers, the mortgage title fraud companies, and law enforcement, we got to shut this down. I do believe that the Real Estate Council of Ontario's bulletin they put out to realtors and how we be more vigilant, very good move.
You might remember the story of Melissa Walsh. Her 93-year-old great-uncle's home in the Beach was nearly sold from under him. After he moved into a long-term care home, fraudsters allegedly used a fake ID to rent his home, and then someone else posed as the 93-year-old and listed it for sale. You can see these photos here from when the home was staged. It even received multiple offers before they were able to catch it. Interestingly, the fake seller misspelled the owner's name in the paperwork. Melissa Walsh says while the memo from RICO is welcomed, it's a sign that some realtors clearly are not following these steps.
It's interesting to see the one bullet point about closely checking for age to see if the person in front of you matches the age on the ID. I think that is directly related to our case. So it's good to see that there's more information out there and that people are being advised to be more vigilant. But again, it just seems like it's a little too late.
Now, Walsh and others want better oversight of the industry and a requirement to provide more than just one piece of government ID in a real estate transaction.
CBC's Farmer Rally reporting. Well, it's now been more than 10 days since the massive earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and the death toll has risen to more than 42,000. But beneath the rubble, there are still glimmers of hope, people being pulled out alive. And tonight, 2 Canadians are flying from Toronto Pearson to Turkey to join in the humanitarian effort. Dale Manukduk has more.
There are people who are buried under the rubble, and the relatives sitting outside helplessly telling them, you know what, we can hear voices.
That's Parampreet Singh, who's flying out from Toronto to Istanbul tonight to join humanitarian aid efforts. Today, a teenage girl was pulled alive from the rubble in Turkey almost 250 hours after the earthquake that's killed tens of thousands of people. The 17-year-old stretchered off into an ambulance, covered in a blanket. Turkey's Minister of Foreign Affairs today taking time to thank NATO allies assisting in the rescue effort.
3,500'den fazlası.
More than 3,500 of the search and rescue personnel in the field came from our allies, and they also provided in cash and in kind assistance to meet the emergency needs.
I felt we are sitting at home and we have everything.
Accompanying Singh, who's from Halifax, is Mandip Buna from Winnipeg. Both will be assisting on the ground in Turkey.
Fully prepared with my mental situation because this is my decision to go. It's been like since this happened, I watch news and on the social medias, so I really wanted to go there and personally I wanted to help their people, they need it.
How many tents are here? They'll be joining international team members from CALSA Aid to provide hot meals and blankets.
It's pretty dire, you know, the temperatures are low, what we see in the videos, you know, the houses are demolished, all the concrete, and people are living outside on the streets, in the tents. So this is what we know, and we have been asked to be a little mentally prepared to, deal with what the emotional aspect of that.
CALSA Aid International has raised nearly $500,000 so far to help relief efforts. Earlier this week, the UN called for $1.4 billion to assist those affected by the quake in Turkey and Syria. Dale Manukduk, CBC News.
Singing is soothing now for her family more than ever. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, her auntie Mila got a horrifying knock at the door.
Oh my God, I can't. When the police came and she just asked me if I'm
And if I know Angela, my heart just sank. I knew right there that something happened.
Something terrible had happened. Police say around 11:30 Monday night, a car traveling at extremely high speeds on Highway 427 flew over a concrete ramp, landing in a ditch, hitting another concrete wall before bursting into flames. Shreya was in the front passenger seat, pulled from the burning wreck alive. She later died in the hospital.
She also died on a day you cannot forget about her, ever. She makes sure that. It's Valentine's Day. So every Valentine's Day, every day after year, we'll never forget her. Nobody will forget her. Well, her character was like that too, but.
Shreya came to Toronto in 2020 and finished high school in Toronto. She was in second-year business at York University. Her goal was to be an accountant to take over her family's garment business back home in Bangladesh.
Right, always in the middle, you'll see.
Her auntie ID'd her over the phone, confirming a tattoo of 3 lucky 7s that Shreya had just got on her arm in December.
This beautiful, loud, lively child will be no more calling me auntie. And their parents are devastated because we haven't seen her body yet.
Her family can't understand why the coroner's office hasn't released Shreya's body yet.
So I don't know when she's coming to us, when we can't plan anything, but if we get it by tomorrow even, then we will have a viewing because she has so many friends here.
In a statement, Ontario's Office of the Chief Coroner wrote an individual must be identified by means such as fingerprints or dental records before being released to family members. We understand families are going through a very tragic time and will work with them to release their loved one as soon as possible. But Shreya's family isn't the only one concerned. 2 other international students from Bangladesh were in the back seat during the crash and died on scene. 20-year-old Aryan Deepta and 17-year-old George Brown College student Mahir Khan.
It's still, we will let you know. So I can't answer to my family members when everybody is counting on me.
Mahir's cousin, Matila Meem, is also frustrated with the speed and lack of answers from the coroner's office. She says Mahir moved to Toronto from Bangladesh just last month.
You wanted to really do a lot, and it ended before it even started.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like I wish it was me.
The driver of the car, 21-year-old international student Nabir Kumar, remains in critical condition. His father is a singer in Bangladesh. He's with his son today in a Toronto hospital.
You know, honestly, I want to be angry with this boy. I really want to be angry, but I can't.
As broken as Mila Daki is, she sees a lesson here for all young drivers.
To the young people, just slow down and just take a minute, you know?
That extra time, she says, could mean a lifetime. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
You are looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline, a wet one out there tonight with a freezing rain warning in place. Currently, we are sitting at the 0 mark downtown. Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your long-range forecast. And Colette, got to be careful if you're driving out there tonight. It's getting pretty slick.
Yeah, winter weather travel advisories, as I was pointing out earlier in the show, to the north of the GTA, and then the freezing rain warning. And as we're getting past the midnight hour, it's going to carry on in eastern Ontario, although we'll see it pushing away from southwestern Ontario. In fact, already seeing that. And as we go through the GTA after midnight, give it an hour or two after midnight, and then we'll get some improvement on the roadways. Timing this out for you, you can see some of the areas where we're breaking out of this, and it's not just freezing rain, mixing with the ice pellets at times. On the backside, it is snow, although it'll just be likely a trace through the city. And then as we look on to eastern Ontario, still even 7 a.m. tomorrow morning from Kingston through Brockville, Cornwall, through those areas, still some slick roadways possible, and some snowfall continuing in the Ottawa Valley. But then into the day on Friday, quite a lot of cloud cover. I expect to be around until we get it later on, and then we'll see some clearing, but that's mostly once the sun is set. It does set us up up nicely for some sun to begin the day on Saturday. And temperatures will be rebounding then, by the way, too. But into the afternoon, more clouds come back in for Saturday and mostly overcast into Sunday. So look at the snowfall potential. It's 5 to 10 centimeters, and with some lake enhancement, a few pockets in here where you'll be seeing more around Georgian Bay or the Bruce Peninsula, over towards the nation's capital as well, although there's most cases it's a lesser amount, closer to the 5 centimeters, and barely a trace, especially because of all the mixing that we see closer to the lakeshore, with it being mostly rainfall. That ice accretion, yes, some buildup, really enhanced as you move into eastern Ontario. So do be aware still. We got a few hours yet to go as that will be carrying on. Those overnight temperatures, watching as those will be falling off as we head towards morning. We have to make an adjustment here. This is still above seasonal. A normal low is around -8. And we're going to be at -6. We just haven't been seeing conditions like that. Winds are falling to -4 by tomorrow morning, and then factor in the winds, it's going to feel like -10 to -15. Tomorrow, a daytime high of just -4, but there it is, that turnaround that will be coming. So it's very short-lived in terms of this cold air moving back in.
And I'll take it. Thanks so much, Colette. Finally tonight, the Canadian International Auto Show is returning to Toronto this week with way more electric vehicles and a track you can test them on.
One of the biggest new features this year is our focus on the electric vehicle. Since our last show in 2020, the industry has totally transformed. It's become far more focused on EV development globally. All manufacturers are pushing down this route. There are more and more take-up of EV vehicles. And despite in Ontario there only being about 5% full EV pickup, it's definitely growing in a very, very fast rate.
While some manufacturers are missing this year, organizers have capitalized on the extra floor space to add some new features, including the 70,000 square foot indoor test track. A life-size Lego Lamborghini is also making an appearance for the first time in North America, using 40,000 Lego Technic pieces. Lego calls this a dimensional mirror of the real thing, right down to the millimeter. The exhibit returns to the Metro Convention Center tomorrow and runs right through February 26. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can get caught up anytime. Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.